The acrid stench of my burned house was still in my hair when she strutted into my courtroom like she owned the place. There I sat, Judge Miriam Blackwood, black robes, gavel in hand, staring at the woman who'd just committed arson against a sitting judge. The sheer balls of it made my teeth clench. But Bryn Ashworth Sterling had no idea what she'd just walked into. See, when you torch a judge's home, you better pray she doesn't get the chance to return the favor legally. And honey, I was about to serve up a 5-course meal of justice with a side of federal prison time. This HOA, Karen thought burning down my house would shut me up. Instead, it lit a fire under me that would consume her entire criminal empire. Every illegal fine, every fraudulent claim, every intimidation tactic, I had it all documented. What would you do if your destroyer just handed themselves to you on a silver legal platter? Where are you watching from? Because this revenge gets brutal. 6 months before my house became a crime scene, I was Judge Miriam Blackwood, respected, feared by criminals, and completely shattered. I'd just buried Harold after watching cancer devour him piece by piece. 28 years of marriage, gone. Our 1940s craftsman home in Pinewood Estates felt like a mausoleum. Pinewood used to be where blue-collar families raised kids and retired teachers tended flower gardens. Then the money moved in. Suddenly, modest ranch homes were getting torn down for McMansions with 3-car garages and wine cellars. The old-timers, people like Walt Henderson, who'd lived here since 1965, watched their property taxes skyrocket while new residents complained about maintaining neighborhood standards. Enter the queen bee of this gentrification army, Bryn Ashworth Sterling. Picture every entitled suburban nightmare you've ever encountered, then add designer athleisure and a god complex. 45 years old, driving a silver Tesla that cost more than most people's annual salary, always clutching some $20 superfood smoothie while explaining why everyone else was doing life wrong. She'd moved in 2 years ago with her contractor husband, immediately announcing plans to elevate Pinewood to its full potential. Translation: get rid of the undesirables. My first encounter with Bryn happened while I was installing Harold's memorial fence. We'd planned this 6-foot privacy barrier together during his final months, our sanctuary where we could drink coffee and watch sunrises without prying eyes. The sweet scent of his prize roses filled the morning air as I worked, 15 years of his careful tending still blooming despite his absence. The crunch of expensive boots on autumn leaves announced her arrival. You must be the widow. Not condolences, not introduction, just cold assessment. Judge Blackwood, I corrected, wiping soil from my hands with deliberate calm. Right, the judge. She pronounced my title like it was a disease. I'm Bryn, HOA president. We have a problem. Out came the pink tape measure, clearly her weapon of choice. The metallic snap of it extending cut through the morning quiet like a whip crack. She measured my fence with theatrical precision, lips pursed in manufactured disapproval. 6 feet 2 inches. Our regulations clearly state 6 feet maximum. That's a $500 violation plus immediate removal costs. I stood slowly, vertebrae popping from grief and sleepless nights. Show me that regulation. Her manicured fingers shuffled through a leather portfolio, clicking against papers like tiny gavels. 5 minutes of searching produced nothing because the regulation didn't exist. My fence measured exactly 6 feet. I'd hired a licensed surveyor specifically to avoid this nonsense. Well, she huffed, face reddening under her spray tan, we'll see about that, Judge. The venom in her voice revealed this wasn't about property standards. That evening, over microwaved leftovers and Harold's favorite bourbon, I pulled up court records. Bingo. 3 years ago, Sterling Premium Builders had appeared before my bench trying to scam an 80-year-old veteran out of $30,000 for emergency roof repairs. The roof was fine. I'd ruled against them hard, including referring them for contractor fraud investigation. This fence bullshit was revenge, pure and simple. But Bryn had made a critical error. She'd targeted a woman who'd spent 20 years sentencing murderers, rapists, and con artists without flinching. Someone who'd watched her soulmate die with dignity while planning how to honor his memory. A person with absolutely nothing left to lose and a complete understanding of how the legal system could be weaponized by someone who knew its every weakness. The rough texture of Harold's fence posts under my palm reminded me why I'd built this barrier. Not to keep the world out, but to protect something sacred. Our memories, our love, our final project together. Bryn Ashworth Sterling had just declared war on a federal judge's sanctuary. In my courtroom, we had a technical term for that level of stupidity. Exhibit A in a federal case. She had no idea what she'd just unleashed. Within 2 weeks, Bryn launched what I can only describe as psychological warfare disguised as HOA enforcement. The woman had clearly studied every petty tyrant's playbook and decided to turn my life into her personal stress test laboratory. The certified letters started arriving like clockwork, thick manila envelopes that made my mailman wince apologetically. 7 pieces of registered mail in 10 days, each more absurd than the last. Violation notice number 1. Unapproved decorative garden feature. The offense? Harold's memorial stone, a simple granite marker reading, "In memory of love that grows eternal." Apparently, grief monuments violated Pinewood's uniform landscape aesthetic. Violation notice number 2, non-regulation mailbox color. My black mailbox had been standard issue since Reagan was president. Suddenly it was creating visual discord. But the one that made my teeth grind? Violation notice number 3, excessive bird feeding creating nuisance conditions. My single modest feeder attracted cardinals, Harold's favorite birds. Watching them had become my morning ritual, coffee steam mixing with mountain air while I pretended he might still walk up behind me. Each letter demanded fines between $200 and $500, threatening liens and legal action. The expensive paper stock probably cost more than most violations themselves. Here's where 20 years on the bench paid off. During law school, I'd memorized Colorado's HOA statutes after my landlord tried similar intimidation tactics. These letters contained more legal holes than a mob lawyer's alibi. Real HOA fines must be reasonable, related to actual violations, and properly documented in adopted bylaws. Bryn's notices cited non-existent regulations and failed to provide mandatory hearing procedures. Time for judicial payback. I spent 3 evenings in Harold's basement office, surrounded by his law books and the musty smell of old legal volumes, building my counterattack. Filed a formal complaint with the Colorado Real Estate Commission detailing Bryn's procedural violations. Photographed my property from every angle. Created spreadsheets documenting her illegal fine patterns. My evidence preservation training was about to become weaponized. But Bryn wasn't finished with amateur hour. On Thursday morning, while I was downtown sentencing drunk drivers, my new security cameras captured pure criminal stupidity in action. Bryn arrived with an entourage, her interior designer, a skeletal woman in head-to-toe white, and her personal trainer, apparently moonlighting as a property inspector. They spent 2 hours manufacturing evidence for non-existent violations. The designer pointed dramatically at Harold's prize roses, like 15 years of careful cultivation had personally insulted her aesthetic sensibilities. The trainer, clearly more familiar with protein powder than property law, took notes on official-looking clipboards. I watched the footage that evening with mounting rage. These people were creating fraudulent documentation to support fraudulent fines.